John was standing with two of his disciples, and as he watched Jesus walk by, he said, "Behold, the Lamb of God." The two disciples heard what he said and followed Jesus. Jesus turned and saw them following him and said to them, "What are you looking for?" They said to him, "Rabbi," which translated means teacher, "where are you staying?" He said to them, "Come and you will see." So they went and saw where Jesus was staying. And they stayed with him that day. It was about 4 p.m. Andrew, the brother of Simon Peter, was one of the two who heard John and followed Jesus. He first found his own brother Simon and told him, "We have found the Messiah," which is translated Christ. Then he brought him to Jesus. Jesus looked at him and said, "You are Simon, the son of John. You will be called Cephas," which is translated Peter. The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
Bible trivia question for this morning. The Gospel of John. Jesus says many things in the Gospel of John. What is the first statement that Jesus ever said in the Gospel of John? Or rather, what's the first question he ever asks in the Gospel of John? It's what we heard just now in the Gospel. What are you looking for? Or what do you seek? The very first question that Jesus asked, according to the Gospel of John, what are you looking for? I know that many of you are familiar because I tell stories often about my brother that I'm coming up on basically the 7th ordination of my priesthood this year, right, in June. And when I was first ordained, I was assigned in Noblesville at a Catholic church there. And my brother lived about 25 minutes away. He lived in Carmel. Now, some of you know he's in seminary now, but at this time he was still basically a pagan. He didn't really come to Mass or anything like that. And we started a tradition, because he lived so close to me, that every Saturday night I would go over to his house and we would have a bonfire. And my brother is, he's 3 years older than me. He was living by himself, right? So basically kind of had like a bachelor pad, right? And out on the patio, if you can imagine, there was actually a big screen TV right, outside. So he built a glass platform, and he had the TV against his garage right, with a glass covering over it. So that any time of the year, right, we could be out there watching sports. So every Saturday night, I would go over there. Now, my brother also had this friend named Garrett. They were fraternity brothers together. They both went to Purdue University, and they were the same fraternity. And Garrett also lived in Carmel, so he would also come over every Saturday night. So 3 guys every Saturday night, watching sports, having a bonfire. And I basically considered myself like the civilized one out of the 3 of them. I kind of kept things more calm, and I would always leave before things got too rowdy. And you can imagine how those evenings went. But I was reminded of this when I was thinking about this question of Jesus, because one night I was there on Saturday night. We've been doing this for about a year, and Garrett, having been in a fraternity, and Garrett's a very interesting person. He's one of those people who just kind of seems like unfazed by anything. Like he's an extreme extrovert. He's 6'5", 250 pounds. Very successful in his career. He works in Kokomo, makes a lot of money. Just to give you an idea about Garrett, he was sent to, I think it was China, right, for his work. And one of the things he would do as he walked through the streets is he would sing, "Thank God I'm a country boy," right, as he walked along the sidewalks, right? Just kind of like this larger-than-life person. Very entertaining, very funny, very outgoing. And he wakes up at 4 o'clock in the morning every day, and basically, once he's finished at work, he basically goes to some restaurant, sits at the bar, and just kind of, talks to whoever's there. And every night when he came over on Saturday nights, we just talked about, sports and just kind of, shooting the breeze, giving each other grief, right? All those kinds of things. And one Saturday night, I was there, and I was getting ready to leave, before it got too late and before things got too rowdy, and all of a sudden, Garrett stopped me. And he said, "Hey, next time you're here, I want to talk about becoming a Catholic." And I was just like totally shocked. Like I think I literally laughed out loud. Right? Like, sure, yeah, right. Maybe he's had too many drinks or something like that. And he said, "No, I'm serious. I've been thinking about it for a long time. And even though we don't talk about it, I've really been thinking, and I want to talk about this." Garrett was one of the last people who I ever expected to ask me about God or to ask me about my faith. And thankfully, he did convert. He's one of the reasons why my brother came back into the church. They actually went through RCIA together. And I was thinking about him as I thought about this question of Jesus. What are you looking for? I remember another person from my youth when I was in high school. There was a young man at my school who, he was kind of a rebel in our school. He was into some not very good things, and yet, he was also very talented. He was on the varsity basketball team. He basically seemed like, all the girls wanted to be, his girlfriend. It seemed like he had everything. He was very arrogant. And the last person you would ever expect to see in a church. And I found out shortly after we graduated that he had actually been arrested for some of the things that he had been involved in. And one of the college students who had graduated from our high school a few years earlier had actually visited him and had convinced him to convert to Christianity. And he was baptized there in the jail or the prison, wherever he was. I'm not really sure where he was. And I remember thinking, man, he was like the last person I would ever expect. Unfortunately for him, he could not overcome some of his addictions, and he did actually pass away, sadly. But I was thinking of this young man as well, and actually praying for him last night and this morning as I was reflecting on this. But I thought of him for the same reason. No matter how confident someone may seem in who they are, no matter how many things they may seem to have going for them, no matter how self-sufficient they might seem, everyone is looking for something. The very first question that Jesus asked in the Gospel of John, what are you looking for? What do you seek? One of the interesting things about our current culture, right, that many of us are a part of, is that we live in an extremely driven culture. People always trying to, get ahead, find success. With adults, it's about, their career or about the success of their children, right, wanting to give them every opportunity. And even the youth are very driven. Sometimes I'm amazed when I hear from our, middle and high school students about how many hours a week they have for practice, or how much time they have to put into their schoolwork. Being a high school student today it's like having 2 full-time jobs, right? If you're an athlete and a successful student. We're very driven, very motivated. And yet at the same time, so many people seem so lost. Statistics say that, this new generation, Generation Z or whatever it's called, is the unhappiest of all the generations at their age. All over the place you see people who, need to see a psychologist or a psychiatrist or a life coach. The doors of places that offer teaching and meditation and yoga, right, they're full. So many people, even though they're so driven and experience so many successful things in their lives, feel lost. I think that in our culture, so many people are driven to find what they seek, and yet they don't really know what they're looking for. And that's why they're always seeking the next thing. As a matter of fact, if you think about our human experience, right, that all of us share, isn't that interesting that really one of the most fundamental experiences that we all have is that we are constantly seeking fulfillment, and yet it always seems to elude us. Now think about in your own experience, just some examples, that I can think of is, I'm a musician, so I like to play music and to learn songs, and sometimes I'll spend days and weeks, right, trying to learn a new song. And then as soon as I have the song mastered, then it's like I don't want to play it anymore. I'm over it. Or I think when I was in high school and about how driven I was to try to find girlfriends, and I'd spend days and weeks strategizing, right? And then it's like as soon as I could convince the girl to be my girlfriend, then it was almost like I was ready to move on to the next thing. Or think about when you seek food, when you have cravings for things. And then all of a sudden you eat it and it's just over. One of the most basic human experiences that all of us have is this constant seeking for fulfillment, and yet it just seems just barely out of our grasp. Or just when we think we have it, then we need something else. C.S. Lewis once said that this is the desire for the infinite within each of us. That we have an infinite desire for fulfillment within us, and since the desire is infinite, no finite thing in this world can fill it. C.S. Lewis said it's like we have this desire for something in another world, and therefore we must be made for another world. And it doesn't mean that all of us are going to ever experience that fulfillment. But wouldn't it be strange if we were made in such a way that we have this desire within us and it wasn't meant for anything? Somebody who hungers for bread, right? That doesn't guarantee they're ever going to have that bread, but wouldn't it be weird if we had that hunger in a world where bread didn't even exist? He called this the desire for the infinite within us. He said it was one of the greatest proofs for God's existence. That we all have this implanted in our soul, and we all experience it. The very first question that Jesus asked in the Gospel of John, what are you looking for? What do you seek? I'll close with a favorite quote of mine. It's from Pope John Paul II. When he went to Toronto for World Youth Day in the year 2000, he was preaching to 3 million young people from all over the world. And he was reflecting on this question. What are you looking for? What do you seek? And he said this to 3 million young people in Toronto. It's a beautiful quote. He said, "It is Jesus that you seek when you dream of happiness. Jesus is waiting for you when nothing else you find satisfies you. Jesus is the beauty to which you are so attracted, and it is He who provoked you with that thirst for fullness that will not let you settle for compromise. It is He who urges you to shed the masks of a false life. It is He who reads in your heart your most genuine choices, the choices that others even try to stifle. It is Jesus who stirs in you the desire to do something great with your lives. He gives you the will to follow an ideal, the refusal to allow yourselves to be ground down by mediocrity. Jesus gives you the courage to commit yourselves humbly and patiently to improving yourselves and all of society, making the world more human and more fraternal." Today, Jesus is asking us the question, what do you seek? What are you looking for? So many of us, we spend our whole lives searching for everything else. And yet ultimately, it is Jesus we seek.